least 2 students from Bahrain. Also, we had with collaboration with CERN through public lectures. First public lecture was by Professor Patrick. Second public lecture was by Professor John Ellis, and the third is today is by Martin. Also, we hope that we will continue this collaboration with CERN. Hopefully, now in Department of Physics, with the help of CERN, we are preparing for a master degree in physics. Hopefully, it will start next year or after. Part of MSc, the project will be directly at CERN. We are going to send students from Research Center to CERN, so they will finish MSc in particle physics. Also, we hope that we are going to join CERN in a small project. A new project is called Milligan. Milligan is a study the structure of dark matter. So at the end, I will say thank you very much, Martin, for this opportunity to give a lecture in Bahrain, a public lecture. And we hope that we are going to see you in Bahrain after Corona. So please start your lecture. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Mohammed. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be with you, even though not quite as I would have hoped, meaning not in person. But yeah, as you were saying, as soon as this difficult period of time is behind us, I hope to be able to visit you guys again. I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to show you in the next 45 minutes what CERN is about, but also what we've done with Bahrain in the last few years, and particularly with the support of Sheikh Hamay, the Research Center, and UOB, what we managed to set up and what we managed to deliver also. And you will see that even though we've only been collaborated for a couple of years, we've actually gone a long way. So what you see on your screen is actually a satellite view, or let's say an aerial view of the region of CERN, of the lab. I guess you can see my mouse. Huh? So over here, you can see the shores of Lake Geneva. Here you can see the airport. And what you see, these lines here that are quite large, this is the LHC. So this is the largest of CERN's accelerator, particle accelerators. As Dr. Mohammed was saying, these are large, very large instruments. This one is 27 kilometers long. And if you follow this line, you can also notice that you don't see anything, any buildings. That's because it's underground, and I will come back to that. So today, we'll talk about CERN, which is the organization providing the accelerator, but also we'll talk about CMS, which is a community of universities that is operating the detectors, looking at what's happening in this accelerator. And UOB is a member, and we're very proud to have them as a member of CMS. Because of the special circumstances, also we'll talk a bit about what are the implications of COVID on the day-to-day life at CERN, and still with a bit of hope, what we could achieve in the near future together with our Bahraini colleagues. All right, let me move on to the next slide. So what is CERN? So first of all, for those of you familiar with Europe, CERN is at the border between France and Switzerland. So I measured today, we are 4,500 kilometers apart as the crow flies. And so what is CERN? Well, CERN is an international organization, an intergovernmental organization based in Geneva. And it happens to be the largest particle physics laboratory in the world. Our mission has 4 pillars. As you would expect, the first one is really fundamental research in particle physics. The idea there is that we are trying to understand the fundamental laws of matter. And that's where you need to recreate matter in its most primal states. And that's where colliders or accelerators colliding particles are needed. And while our project cycles are very long, so one project can be 30, 40 years long, occasionally we discover new stuff, and that's extremely exciting. Like in 2012, when we discovered the Higgs boson at CERN, and that in turn led to Nobel Prizes awarded to the gentleman who had foreseen the existence of the Higgs boson. That is really the fundamental mission of CERN, to push the boundaries of human knowledge, to discover new funding blocks of matter. And this is a very nice picture on the right-hand side of the slide, where you see 3 Nobel Prize winners who have gone through CERN. And that's something that is quite special about our organization, is that we, on a day-to-day basis, can interact with the greatest minds of science. It's very rare when you've got 3 like this around you, but it's still a privilege to be in such an outfit. There are 3 other pillars, very important ones too. The second one is technology and innovation. When you are doing fundamental research, you can't just pick up equipment or tools from a shop. Everything is custom made, including the technologies. So even though our main goal is to do fundamental research, we must also develop the technology that we need to do our research. And this leads to innovation. And that's only fair because we are working with public money, and these innovations are then transferred to society. And 2 examples that are obviously the most famous one is that the World Wide Web was created at CERN, not because we wanted to bring internet to each and every house. That's a very nice outcome, but because initially we needed a way to connect our computers to look or to exchange data. But even though we were looking at fundamental research, we developed something that changed the face of the world, the World Wide Web. The same applies for medical applications. The accelerators that we use to do research, they are the same that you can use to treat some types of cancer. So that's a very important part of our mandate, because we are a public entity developing the technology that then are brought back into society. The third pillar is training and education. We do believe that it is extremely important to get a sense of passion for science very early on in the youngest minds of our students. We start trying to get this students' interest at the level of high school. It can look like it's very early, but in fact, it is so important that we want to create a buffer of talent, a buffer of, let's say, passion for science. And you will see, I will talk about it a bit later, but we have a lot of training programs. Some of them have actually already benefited to Bahraini students. Some of them that are more restricted to our member states, but altogether, CERN has a duty to train and educate the younger generation. And finally, the 4th pillar is that we like to think of ourselves as a smaller version of the world, in the sense that we've got 110 nationalities, very different backgrounds, very different cultures, and yet it works. And I think that's quite an inspiring model to learn from. Every summer, well, not now because of COVID, but normally every summer we get students from all over the world to spend 8 weeks at CERN. And this is an eye-opener for these young people. And that's also part of our mission. We want to show that despite all our differences, when you focus on science, things can work very smoothly. There is nothing weird at CERN when you meet an Israeli and an Iranian scientist working together on a physics paper. That's totally normal. So this microcosm around science, with the common denominator as science, is an experience for people coming from outside. And we're quite proud to be able to show that to the younger generation. Some of the people who come through CERN I mean, most of them, let's be honest, they don't stay at CERN because the opportunities in high energy physics are limited. But a lot of them move on to very exciting careers. And on the left-hand side, you got a picture of the inventor of the World Wide Web, who was at CERN when it was created a bit more than 30 years ago now. But a lot of people like him move on then to very exciting new challenges. So who is at CERN? So this is a map of the world that shows you all the places where CERN has let's say, a collaboration in place. Actually, this is a bit outdated because Oman should certainly be in gray here. So you've got different types of ways to work with CERN. In dark blue, you've got the member states. So these are the countries that are systematically contributing to the budget of CERN. Then you've got what we call associate member states. And these are countries that are not quite, let's say, ready to commit to a full membership, which comes with a lot of rights, but also a lot of duties, and financial ones is certainly something that can be a challenge. In the Arab world, the country that is the closest to become an associate member is Egypt. I'm currently in discussion with their government to see if there are enough synergies for them to contemplate an affiliation to CERN. CERN is open to each and every country on the planet. The only thing that is important is that there is a sufficient traction in the country for fundamental research, and that's not always possible. If you go one step back, you get to the countries that are in light blue. These are very important contributors, in fact, Japan, the US, Russia, but they are what we call observer states. These are states that contribute massively to CERN, but on a project-by-project basis, not systematically. And finally, in gray, these are all the countries where we've got collaborations, like Bahrain, like Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, Kuwait, and so on and so forth. So these are collaborations in a sense that we've got universities there in which scientists are embedded in the CERN programs. So how does that work in practice? Well, you got 23 members of CERN, and we have about 1.2 billion Swiss francs, which is about million dollars of budget. And so some of this budget goes into paying for utility like electricity, water, internet connection. Some of them goes to tooling. Of course, there are the salaries of the CERN staff to pay, but really the bulk of that money goes into financing the operation of the LHC, which is this 27-kilometer long accelerator. The way this money is being collected is very social, in a sense that if a country does very well, like Germany right now, so a GDP that is fairly high, then the country contributes more. And when a country goes through an economic downturn or sees the size of its economy shrink, then it will pay less. So that's a quite nice way to adjust to the economic realities of today. But that was for the member states. So how does Bahrain fit into all this? Well, we have at CERN what we call collaborations. So collaborations are groups of universities that agree to share their resources for mutual benefit. And they do so to operate a large detector, a large apparatus. There are no limitation about who can join. This is completely outside the group of member states. So here is an example. Here you've got 3 member states, Germany, France, and the UK, and 2 non-member states, China and the US. The universities in these countries can decide to send or to share human resources, scientists, and financial resources with other groups of universities. And this is what we call a collaboration. On the LHC, there are 4, ATLAS, CMS, LHCb, and ALICE. Today, I will mainly focus on CMS. And with these resources, the scientists design, operate, maintain, and upgrade the detectors that are looking at what's happening in the particle accelerators in the collider. So this is where Bahrain fits. Bahrain, or the University of Bahrain to be precise, is a member of CMS. So how big is CERN? So in fact, in terms of staff, it's relatively modest. We are 2.5, 2.6 thousand, let's say, employees of CERN. But on top of that, you got 250 fellows, which is a bit like a young graduate after a master or a PhD or after a PhD, so like a postdoc. We also have 600 students. So students, this is bachelor, master, and PhD students. And really, the bulk of the people you will meet at CERN as what we call users. Users are people that have a job in their home country, in a university, but are working at CERN. So people from AUB, for example, University of Bahrain, have the status, enjoy the status of user, which means that when Dr. Mohammed wants to come to CERN, this is his home. He doesn't have to ask. He is a user. He benefits from the infrastructure at CERN. All these users, they come from all over the world, and they have access to our computer mainframe. They have access to our research facilities, clean rooms, workshops, and so on. And in fact, they are using CERN as a provider an enabler of their research. In addition to all that, we sometimes have external companies, because whenever a particular job, a particular task is better outsourced to a private company, we clearly do it. So altogether, we've got 18,000 people at CERN on a regular day. Not right now, unfortunately, because of the restrictions we've got. But before COVID, this was a totally normal number on a regular day. Which means that when you come to CERN, you have all sorts of facilities. You've got 2 hotels, you've got a hostel, you've got restaurants, 3 of them, post offices, banks, sports facilities. And you need that because scientists tend to be quite passionate. So you would find people at work at any time of the day and night. So we need to provide the right environment for that. So it's a bit like a small city. Now, if I look at the way our collaborators are spread around the world, here you can see in color the different parts of the planet with the kind of collaboration that exists with their home country. So what you see is that in red, these are the countries that are not yet on their way to membership. And so there you find Bahrain with 2 registered users, that's how we call them, so people who can come and go to CERN. But of course, this is it can easily increase it just on request. And it's the same by nationality. The distinction between by location, by nationality is that sometimes you will find, like in Lebanon, a lot of people are Lebanese working at CERN, but not based in Lebanon. So they are in universities in either the US or the Gulf region or Europe. At CERN, the peak of our population is at 27 years of age, which means that we are a fairly vibrant and young organization. And that's because, to be fair, we've got 3,000 PhD students, so just that already makes our population quite young. When it comes to gender parity, we're not there yet. So we only have 18% of female scientists. We're doing our best to correct that. And okay, let's say the trend is positive. They were only 8% in 95, but still a long, long way to go. So what happens to people who come through CERN on an internship, on a PhD program, and so on? Well, only 10% of these people actually stay. As I was saying, particle physics is exciting, but there are only a limited amount of job opportunities. But the good news is that people who have gone through CERN have no trouble at all finding work in other areas. And in fact, the bulk of them go to industry, as you can see, and even 35% go into computing. So this is still, even though people can't stay in high energy physics, this is still a very nice thing to have on your CV. Now, I touched on it before. We have not last summer, but normally every summer we've got a summer program where we bring 1 to 2 students per country. And this has been very successful in Bahrain, thanks to Sheikh Hameh, who has been very generous with the sponsoring of students from UOB. We had two, so in 2019. And I think it's very, very important for the collaboration between CERN and Bahrain that we keep these numbers steady, because having students to experience CERN as a, let's say, on site, to see our detectors, to see our research facilities, is the best way to convince them to embrace a career in science. So this is a program we like very much and that has a lot of success. So why, you might say, do we have spent so much energy and time at CERN? And well, clearly this is fundamental research. As I mentioned, there's nothing better at CERN than when we actually find a new particles. And I can tell you, the day the discovery of the Higgs boson was announced at CERN, it was extremely moving. And this is the best reward we can get. When you get that sort of announcement, you feel that you've done your job to push back the boundaries of human knowledge. This discovery was followed by a Nobel Prize that was jointly awarded to Franza Englert and Peter Higgs for their discovery. And in the, let's say, when this prize was given to these two gentlemen, CERN was acknowledged, not only CERN for providing the accelerator, but also the collaborations, ATLAS and CMS. And again, that's something that made us super proud. And so sometimes people ask us, but then, okay, you found the Higgs boson, so what's next? You know, are you done? And the short answer is absolutely not. There are still so many things that we don't understand about our universe. The LHC, when you're colliding particles against each other, what you're essentially doing is going back in time. You're going back to the very primitive initial state of matter, right after the Big Bang. And you need that sort of particles to be analyzed to understand how matter behaves around us. And yes, we are very far away, a long time after the Big Bang, 13.8 billion years. But the LHC allows you to recreate the state of matter that was a fraction of a second after the Big Bang. There are many other questions, antimatter, for example. Why is there more matter than antimatter? While we started with the Big Bang, so there should be an equal quantity of matter and antimatter. We start from nothing and we go back to nothing. But the simple fact we're here means that there is an imbalance. There is more matter than antimatter, or at least it's not equally distributed. And that's another topic that CERN is looking at. In fact, for that particular question, the scientific community put a particle detector on the International Space Station. It's called AMS, and it has its control room on the CERN campus. Other questions, dark matter. If you look at the way galaxies spin, you can't quite make it work without acknowledging that there is some matter that you're missing, that it must be there because of the way the universe or the galaxies work or spin, but it's not there. And so since you don't see it, we call it dark matter. And it's such a huge challenge because 95% of the universe is made of this dark matter that we are desperately trying to find. So you see, there are still huge questions to answer. And because of the complexity of the physics, the complexity of the instrument that we need to understand these mechanisms, we have no choice. We can only do that through collaboration. Not one country, not one continent can harness these challenges. You need to bring all the skill that you can and get people to work together for mutual benefit. And that's what we are trying to do at CERN. And the best way to do that is to start as early as possible. This is a picture taken in 2019 during the summer program at CERN. It's a beautiful picture. This shows you how diverse our community is. And I certainly, when I see that picture, I really hope that we'll get something similar, probably not this year, unfortunately, but certainly next year. So how does that work? Well, to make it super simple, you can imagine that what happens in the LHC is like taking two protons and smashing them against each other. That's very simplified. In fact, we're not talking about two protons. We're talking about bunches of protons. And when I say smashing, it's in fact a lot more brutal than that, because these protons are actually circulating through the LHC at almost the speed of light. And it's not one time that they collide, these bunches. It's 40 million times per second. All right, so you have to imagine that we've got this 27-kilometer accelerator that is 100 meters underground. Inside that accelerator, you've got two beams of protons, one running clockwise, the other one running counterclockwise. And at specific location, the two beams are sent head to head. And then what happens when two particles collide? Well, we've got the famous equation, E equal mc squared. And the idea is quite simple, is that energy at these speeds is like matter. So if you take two protons that collide, they have together, they're going to bring energy, and matter, other matter, so something else than protons, will emerge from that collision. And that's what emerges. So the byproduct of these collisions is exactly what we want to understand. We want to be able to understand, to analyze the mechanisms that give rise to this new matter, because sometimes with the right energy and with, let's be honest, a bit of luck, what is produced is extremely rare. And it's something that we are desperately looking for to better understand how our world works. So in order to do that, you need a very large apparatus, and the one that we're going to talk about is certainly one of the largest on Earth. This is, again, a top view from our area. You still recognize the lake, you still recognize the airport. This is the border in red. So on that side, you've got Switzerland, on that side, you've got France. This is the main Cern campus, where I could have given that talk, but unfortunately in our region, there is a curfew, so I had to go back home. This is a second part of the Cern campus. The beams, so the protons, are starting to be accelerated on the main campus, then they're injected in a first large accelerator, and then in the LHC, so the 27-kilometer one. And in 4 locations around that ring, you've got detectors, so ALICE, ATLAS, LHCb, and CMS, that are looking at what happens when the particles collide. In order to keep these particles on an orbit, to get them to turn around the ring, you need magnets. And because of the power of these particles, or let's say the energy of these particles, you need very powerful magnets. And so for this purpose, CERN had to design and build and develop the technology to build the most powerful magnets ever built. And here, this is a view of the inside of the LHC. So you can see it's not super large. And you can see at the very end there that the magnets I mean, there's a bend in the tunnel. It goes to the left. Well, that's because we are trying to keep our protons on this orbit, on this circular orbit. So the magnet themselves are tilting slightly with each magnet the trajectory of these protons. Now, these protons, they are circulating into a beam pipe. And so clearly you don't want them to have anything in their way, otherwise they're going to hit something that is not what you want them to hit. So you need extremely high vacuum. And inside the beam pipe of the LHC, the kind of vacuum that you encounter is about the same as what you would find in outer space between the Earth and the Moon. So you're looking at super high vacuum, the highest vacuum that we've got on Earth. Another technological challenge is that for the magnets to have the power to bend the trajectory of the particles, of the protons, you need superconductive magnets. So superconductive magnets are a very special type of magnets. They work at extremely low temperatures. They're colder than outer space. And they are cooled down, these magnets, thanks to liquid helium. So you're looking at a material that has extraordinary properties, but it needs to be cooled down. And so you could see the LHC and its 27 kilometers as a gigantic fridge, or freezer rather, that where you lower the temperature close to the one of outer space. And this is to allow the magnets to have the power to tilt the trajectory of the particles to keep them on a circular orbit. And brain, this is another movement of the detector to reach a particular part that we need to maintain. CMS is very big. It is 25 meters long. It is 15 meters high, 15 meters across, and through it you've got the beam pipe through which the protons are circulating. I hope you see my mouse here. So through that pipe, you have to imagine that two beams of protons are circulating, one clockwise, the other counterclockwise. And so all these operations need to happen every time we want to maintain the detector. And you can see the complexity of putting together the sensors, the pipes, the cables, the optical fiber. All this makes working on a detector extremely challenging. All right, and you can find that video on YouTube if you want to see it again. All right, but that's one thing. So now we've seen how we produce the particles. We've seen how we send them through the LHC. We've seen what happens when they collide. But that's not the end of the story, because your detectors might be like a kind of super camera that looks at what's being produced at the collision point. But then you need to look and analyze these kind of pictures. And that requires a huge amount of computing power. So for those of you familiar with this terminology, at CERN, we produce 1 petabyte, so 1 million of gigabytes per second. That's hard to put in context. So let me give you another example. Every year at CERN, we produce more data than the worldwide telecom industry since 2000. Okay, but unfortunately, now we had a bit of a hiccup with COVID. Like all of you, we are terribly impacted. So we had to implement a lot of measures. First of all, we all wear masks, and we have what we call proximeters. So they are devices that are beeping when you are too close to a colleague. Teleworking has become the norm. Video conferencing also. There is absolutely no way to travel, and unfortunately, we can't get anybody to visit us. That's very sad, because that was part of what made working at CMS so interesting. In your region, we have a lot of countries, a lot of universities that are working with us, in Oman, in Saudi Arabia, Iran, Egypt, Turkey, and so on. And we get new universities all the time. Last year, a fairly long time, and actually Abdel Salam is still with us. Again, they were sent thanks to the generosity of Sheikh Hamay, and with also a lot of support and funds from the University of Bahrain. What Abdel Salam did was to design and, in fact, produce in Bahrain a piece of tooling that will be installed into the detector. And we hope to have this piece of hardware sent to us very shortly. Another student who was with us is Abdullah. He was focusing on parallel computing for CMS. Again, sponsored by Sheikh Hamay and by the University of Bahrain. And we are expecting him to come back for his PhD. So what about the future? Very quickly. So 2021, we are certainly hoping to have another generation of Bahraini students coming to us. We already know that Abdel Salam will stay with us. He will be working on a very complex piece of tooling to support some of the detector for installation. Abdullah should be back with us in September to do his PhD with us. And we are at the moment, together with UOB, the University of Bahrain, looking at setting up 4 projects that would allow students to come to CERN, students from UOB to come to CERN. One is in fluid dynamics, sensor fusion, another one in artificial intelligence, and the 4th one in energy recycling. At the moment, we are fine-tuning the funding scheme. We're also going to have 1 or 2 UOB students in physics for the summer program, but there again, it's only remote. What is very also important to understand is that when we get students coming to CERN, it's not just a one-off. When they come back, they also help to boost the relationship between Bahrain and CERN. As mentioned, there is now an MSc program that is being set up in particle physics. And also we have a committee for advanced artificial intelligence and computing center that is also being set up by UOB. And this was certainly, let's say, boosted by the presence of Bahraini students at CERN. And I would like to end this presentation with expressing my greatest gratitude to some very special people who have been working very hard to establish the collaboration with CERN. Of course, Sheikh Hamay and the rest of the team, Miriam, Ita, and Dr. Mohammed. Also, the University of Bahrain, the presidents and the deans of science, engineering, and IT have been extremely active. And from the Prime Minister's office, we also have the chance to have Hamid and Walid to be extremely committed to making or to developing this relationship even further. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'd be delighted to answer some of your questions.
Thank you very much, Martin, and for this presentation and this easy material, and I think everything was quite simple.
I can't quite hear you, Dr. Mohammed. Maybe
you are not hearing me? You are? Now?
Yeah, that's
okay,
better.
Okay, just to say thank you very much for this presentation. It was very, very nice, very, very smooth. You did everything clear to everyone here. So thank you very much. Now,
good to hear.
If anyone have a question, please, from the audience here. Okay.
Is there an experiment now at CERN to produce small black holes?
No. So in fact, there was a lot of media coverage at the very beginning of the startup of the LHC. High energy physics is tricky to explain to the public because we can't show the particles. It's one of these disciplines where you can only rely on the imagination of people to picture what's actually happening in our detectors, in our accelerators. We'll never be able to show people the particles. The best we can do is to show, but it's very different. So quite naturally, when people can't see this thing that we say exists, they can be a bit nervous. Yes, there was some discussion about black holes in some media. What I can say is that if I was under the slightest suspicion that what I do every day is dangerous, I would just not do it. So I can guarantee that we're not going to create a black hole that's going to swallow the Earth. But it's difficult. It's difficult to let people see what we do. And so science, in the last few years, you probably noticed that science has been under attack a lot. Scientists were doubted, criticized sometimes. We can't always show what we do. And it's only peer review that really can, let's say, strengthen our position and our conviction. But not everything can be shown, unfortunately.
Yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It was very informative. To have someone.
You're welcome.
It's always informative to have someone come present to us. Actually, I have two questions, not just one. One regarding us as students, and one regarding someone's CERN. First one, what are your advices for us as physics students? I see here are physics students, so what are your advices to us as we are on the verge of coming to the science community, so can you give us advice? Also, this is a question I almost always ask a presenter who comes to say,
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. I can't really hear I got the first question though. I understood the first question.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
But the second one I didn't.
Yeah,
Yes, yes.
I'll repeat, yes. This is a question I always ask the presentators who come to us. I word it somewhat mysteriously, then I'll elaborate. What can we gain from understanding how to create everything from nothing? Like we do research in CERN and in most laboratories in the world to understand like the Big Bang. What is our goal from understanding the Big Bang? Like, if we understood the Big Bang, what is our gain? What will we, as a science community, grow? What will improve in the world? Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you for your questions. All right, the first one, what can you do as an MSc in physics? First of all, congratulations. It's a tough career, but it's a fascinating one. So I'm sure you will do great if you do that. It is so. Physics has two main avenues. Either it's academic research or academic like teaching, or it is research. As I said, at CERN, only 10% of people who come as students can actually stay just because of the shortage of position. The good thing is, whatever you do after you've done physics, I would say, you'll be equipped with the analytical skills and the method to do almost everything you like. What's around us. So it is extremely, as knowledge, if you like, it's very rich. My advice when you enter that community is probably to see where you want to go. Are you more into it because you want to communicate your passion for science? You want to inspire people to be scientists, to think as a scientist, or are you more about building the next tools to increase the knowledge of our species? And that's something that will, in fact, define your trajectory. I would think it's a modest opinion. Obviously, I'm far from being an expert, but that's, I would say, figure that out, because that would probably guide your choices of internship, choices of PhD, and so on and so forth. There are many things that you can do. Now, why do we bother to try to understand the Big Bang and so on? Well, it's almost philosophical as a question. I think our species is curious by nature, and my impression is that we are better off when we understand our surroundings, than if we don't. And so, yes, understanding the Big Bang is not going to transform our lives tomorrow. It's not going to bring, let's say, a new technology immediately, and at least not as a I'd say downstream from the understanding of the Big Bang. But the evolution of humankind has always been driven by technology and by the understanding of what's around us. So for me, it's almost like our destiny to try to always better understand and because if you understand, you can adapt. And if you can adapt, you're more resilient. So as a species, I think one of the way we're going to be able to survive in this changing environment is to be more acutely aware of how things work and what we can do to make things more sustainable. I hope that understands. It's really my modest opinion. But I hope that answers your question somehow.
Okay. I have a question.
Yeah.
Just 2 days ago, LHCb announced that they discovered. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, LHCb, they announced that they discovered either particle or a new particle or a new force. Okay, this coming from decay of B meson,
yeah,
which is inside B quark. So it is not going to electron and muon, it's going to 2 electrons. If this is okay, is right, will this affect the program of CMS and ATLAS? Because new force, that means standard model is not exactly working. It will change.
So, I mean, we're only at 3.16.
Yeah.
I think we're only at 3.1 sigma or something like this, and we're not yet. It's not yet a.
It's not yet, but
let's say it's a hint. It's
yeah.
It looks like it could become something. Yeah. I mean, that would be fantastic, because if I mean, as scientists, if we were to find like it's a bit like the reference model that we use every day, was to need to be tuned. That would give us a huge amount of exciting to do. I'm pretty sure that if this was to be confirmed, there would be very serious thought about tuning the research program of CERN.
My second question about summer students training this summer. It will be virtual, that's right. What about their project?
Yeah, unfortunately.
What about their project? They can't start with project virtual also, or they will
So
they will do both?
And yes.
So
yes, they will do both.
To start with project, you have to meet with the supervisor to discuss with him, and virtual will be a little difficult. I think it will be, but it will.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, we were in front. We had to choose either to cancel or to do it virtual, and so you know, we thought it's better to try and do it virtual than not do anything. We had a lot of applicants. We have a lot of nice projects, but yes, it will not be the same as coming to CERN. There's no question.
My last question is
but hopefully 2022 we'll have them back. Them back.
Yeah. Is CMS
yes,
now?
Sorry, there's a bit of delay, so we keep interrupting each other.
Yes. Okay. Is CMS now in operation, or still is under maintenance? CMS detector.
CMS. So both the LHC and the 4 experiments are currently under maintenance, and we hope to be back into, let's say, data taking, let's say a year from now, give or take.
So is COVID-19 affect that maintenance? I mean, make it late? Or?
Yeah. Yes. No, absolutely, because for what we call in Europe the first wave really shut down CERN. Yeah. So we had to stop everything and we had to go home, which means that all the operations on the detectors were stopped. The operations on the LHC were stopped. The only operation that continued, and at a lower pace to be completely in line with the safety standards of our host countries, were the construction sites for what we call HL-LHC, so the next generation of accelerator. But absolutely, we were hit pretty badly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any more? Yes.
Thank you so much for your nice talk. I can see from your talk and these answers that CERN has faced a lot of challenges because of the pandemic, but I'm sure that there are some advantages here too. So if you don't mind shedding some light on the bright side, how did CERN benefit from the pandemic? And also, what changes do you plan to keep after the pandemic? Thank you.
Thank you for that very interesting question, because I think it's also part of the mindset of scientists to find some silver lining when things are not going quite as we wanted. So, okay, benefits for CERN. I mean, I struggle a little bit with that concept, because I think all in all, a lot of our colleagues got, I mean, not a lot, but some of our colleagues got really sick. We had to make some tough choices about granting access to our campus for the let's say the people that are of a certain age, which was very painful for them because you know, scientists and physicists in particular, they tend to be passionate about what they say well beyond retiring age, and so it was quite tough for a lot of our colleagues who are used to work even in their retirement and could not come to CERN. So I don't know if there were benefits. One thing we did learn, and that we will keep doing, is that there is a way to work efficiently with a fair amount of teleworking. That's something that was possible before the pandemic, but now it was, I mean, this was an opportunity to really show ourselves really that we can function as an organization even with the kind of restriction that have been put in place. So that's for me the silver lining, is that the tools and the methods that we've developed to work remotely are going to help us in the long term. I'm pretty sure about that.
I think we reached at the end. Okay. Okay. At the end, just on the behalf of Sheikh Ibrahim Center and on the behalf of all, we are going to say thank you very much, Martin, for this lecture, for this material, and we hope that the collaboration will continue between Kingdom of Bahrain and CERN, especially after COVID-19. We are preparing ourselves to work much more harder. Department of Physics is waiting the MSc program, hopefully, and we are preparing our students for that. It will be very nice, and we hope that we are going to invite you again to Bahrain to give a direct lecture to the department and to discuss everything with them. Thank you very much, and thank you very
much for having me.
They attend the lecture. We hope to meet you, Director. My respect to all
thank you very much.
Friends at CERN, and hope good health for everyone there. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.